In the celestial realm, Anya knelt before God, her head bowed in reverence. "Father, you have summoned me. How may I serve you?" God's voice rumbled like distant thunder, filling the air around them. "My child, I have a task for you, one that requires your divine gifts." Anya looked up, her eyes shining with devotion. "Speak, and I shall obey." "There is a young girl, Charlie, who faces great challenges in her life. She is surrounded by darkness, but she has the potential to do great things. I need you to watch over her, to shield her from harm, and guide her towards a better path." Anya's heart swelled with purpose. "It will be done, Father, but how shall I approach this task?" God smiled, his eyes filled with a wisdom that transcended time and space. "You will appear to her as a teacher in her high school. Use your divine powers to protect her from those who would do her harm, and to inspire her to rise above the darkness that surrounds her." "And what of her free will?" Anya asked. "How shall I balance my duty to protect her with her own choices?" "That is the greatest challenge you will face," God replied. "You must allow her to make her own decisions, even if they lead her astray. Your role is to be a guiding light, not a controlling force." Anya nodded, her resolve strengthening. "I understand, Father. I will not fail you." God placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch filled with a warmth that radiated through her being. "I know you won't, my child. Now go, and may my light be your guide." With those words, God vanished, leaving Anya alone in the celestial realm. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her mission settle upon her shoulders. She would not rest until Charlie was safe, no matter what challenges lay ahead. In the heart of Los Angeles, a city plagued by crime and darkness, a young girl named Charlie fought to keep her dreams alive. The city was a maze of dimly lit streets, where the sound of sirens and gunshots echoed through the night. Graffiti-covered walls and boarded-up windows were a constant reminder of the violence that lurked in every corner. Born into a broken family, Charlie's life was a constant struggle. Her father, a burly man with a gruff voice and a penchant for alcohol, would often come home late at night, his breath reeking of whiskey. He would then proceed to verbally and physically abuse Charlie's mother, a petite woman with a kind face and a weary expression. Charlie's mother worked long hours at minimum wage jobs, trying to make ends meet and keep a roof over their heads. But the stress and pain of the abuse often drove her to seek solace in drugs, leaving Charlie to fend for herself. The apartment they lived in was small and cramped, with peeling paint and a musty smell that never seemed to go away. Charlie shared a room with her mother, the sound of her father's snoring and the occasional crash of broken glass keeping her awake at night. Despite the constant threat of violence and the temptation of drugs and crime that surrounded her, Charlie refused to give in. She knew that there was more to life than this endless cycle of pain and despair. She dreamed of a future where she could escape the darkness and create a better life for herself. As Charlie walked through the halls of her high school, she was unaware of the celestial being who watched over her. With flowing golden hair that cascaded down her back in soft waves and piercing yellow eyes that seemed to see into the depths of one's soul, Anya appeared as a young, beautiful woman to the human eye. Anya had taken on the role of a teacher at Charlie's high school, using her divine powers to shield the girl from harm. With a mere thought, she could manipulate the minds of those who threatened Charlie, turning their attention elsewhere or causing them to second-guess their actions. One day, as Charlie sat in Anya's class, she felt a strange connection to her teacher. There was something about Anya's kind eyes and gentle smile that made Charlie feel safe and understood. Little did she know that Anya was an angel sent by God to protect her from the darkness that threatened to consume her. Charlie, a petite girl with striking emerald eyes and a mane of chestnut curls, excelled academically, maintaining her position as the top student in her class. Her intelligence and determination were a beacon of hope in the darkness that surrounded her. However, her success made her a target for jealousy and resentment from her classmates. One day, as Charlie walked home from school, a group of boys from her class cornered her in a dimly lit alley. The walls were covered in graffiti, and the air was thick with the stench of garbage and urine. The boys, their faces twisted with malice, taunted her, calling her names and accusing her of thinking she was better than them. Charlie's heart raced with fear, but she refused to show it. She stood tall, her chin held high, as the boys circled around her like vultures. Suddenly, she heard a familiar voice calling out from the end of the alley. "Hey, what's going on here?" Anya, Charlie's teacher, approached the group, her brow furrowed with concern. The boys, caught off guard by her presence, scattered, their taunts turning to mumbled curses as they fled. Charlie looked up at Anya, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. "Thank you, Miss Anya," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Anya placed a gentle hand on Charlie's shoulder, her eyes filled with a wisdom that belied her youthful appearance. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft and reassuring. Charlie nodded, her heart still racing from the encounter. "I'm fine, Miss Anya," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. From that day on, Charlie made it her mission to protect Anya in secret. She would often walk home with her teacher, making sure she arrived safely at her apartment. Anya, unaware of Charlie's protective instinct, simply enjoyed the company of her bright and determined student. What Charlie didn't know was that Anya had been secretly working to eliminate the very threats that Charlie feared. In the shadows, Anya had sabotaged the plans of local criminals and gang members, ensuring that they would never harm her beloved student. One night, as Anya walked home alone, she encountered a group of men who had been terrorizing the neighborhood. Without hesitation, she approached them, her eyes filled with a cold, calculating fury. "Leave this area," she commanded, her voice firm and unwavering. "If I ever see you here again, I'll make sure you never see another day." The men, sensing something otherworldly about Anya, scattered in fear, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. Anya watched them go, a small smile playing on her lips. She knew that she had to protect Charlie at all costs, even if it meant getting her own hands dirty. She would do whatever it took to keep her student safe. In the days that followed, Anya continued to work in the shadows, sabotaging the plans of those who threatened Charlie's safety. She would slip into the homes of gang leaders and drug kingpins, leaving behind a trail of destruction in her wake. One by one, the criminals who had once terrorized the neighborhood began to disappear, their bodies found in dark alleys or abandoned warehouses. The police were baffled, unable to find any leads or suspects. But Anya knew the truth. She was the one responsible for their demise, her divine powers allowing her to strike with precision and efficiency. She was Charlie's guardian angel, her protector in the shadows. As Charlie continued to excel in school, unaware of the dangers that lurked around her, Anya watched over her with a fierce determination. She would stop at nothing to ensure that her student remained safe. On one fateful night, as Charlie was studying for an important exam, she heard a commotion outside her window. Peering out, she saw a group of men attacking a woman in the street. Without hesitation, Charlie rushed outside, determined to help. To her surprise, the woman they were attacking was none other than her teacher, Miss Anya. Charlie's protective instinct kicked in, and she confronted the men, pleading with them to stop. To her surprise, they turned their attention to her, their eyes filled with malice. Charlie refused to back down even as the men surrounded her. She fought back with a fierceness that surprised even Anya, who had been watching the scene unfold from a distance. In the end, the men fled, leaving Charlie and Anya alone in the street. Anya approached Charlie, her eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Charlie nodded, her heart still racing from the adrenaline. "I'm fine, Miss Anya," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. Anya pulled Charlie into a tight hug, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for protecting me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Charlie hugged her back, her own eyes filled with tears of relief. In that moment, she knew that she would do anything to keep Anya safe, no matter what the cost. But the relief was short-lived as the men returned, their eyes filled with a thirst for revenge. They cornered Charlie, their hands reaching for her clothes. Anya tried to intervene, but Charlie pushed her away, determined to protect her teacher at all costs. In the chaos that followed, Charlie found herself cornered by the men. They taunted her, their hands reaching for her clothes. Anya watched in horror as Charlie's innocence was shattered, her cries echoing through the night. In that moment, something inside Charlie snapped. She fought back with a ferocity that surprised even Anya. Using a broken bottle, she slashed at her attackers, her eyes wild with rage. The men, caught off guard by her sudden violence, fled in terror. Charlie stood there, her clothes torn and her body bruised, but her spirit unbroken. Anya approached her cautiously, unsure of what to say. "Why didn't you stop them?" Charlie asked, her voice trembling with anger and pain. Anya hesitated, unsure of how to explain her own limitations as a human. "I wanted to protect you, but I couldn't interfere," she said, her voice filled with regret. Charlie scoffed, her faith in humanity shaken. "Some teacher you are. If this is what the world has in store for me, then I want no part of it." In the days that followed, Charlie's anger only grew. She began to lash out at those who had wronged her, using her intelligence and cunning to exact revenge. Anya watched helplessly as the girl she had sworn to protect descended into darkness. One night, as Charlie walked home from a party, she encountered a group of men who had been terrorizing her neighborhood. Without hesitation, she approached them, her eyes filled with a cold, calculating fury. "I have a proposition for you," she said, her voice steady and confident. "I can help you take down the local drug kingpin, but I want a cut of the profits." The men, intrigued by her offer, agreed. Over the next few weeks, Charlie worked with them, using her knowledge of the neighborhood and her ability to manipulate people to help them take down their target. As the drug kingpin lay dying at their feet, Charlie turned to the men, a twisted smile on her face. "I lied," she said simply, before pulling out a gun and shooting them one by one. Anya watched in horror as Charlie's plan unfolded, her heart breaking for the girl she had once known. She had failed in her mission to protect Charlie, and now the girl she loved like a daughter had become a monster. What Charlie didn't know was that this entire scenario had been orchestrated by God himself. He had seen the darkness that had consumed Charlie's heart and knew that she needed to be tested, to see if she could still be saved. By putting Anya in danger, God knew that Charlie would rush to her aid, her protective instinct overriding her own fear. And when Charlie fought back against the men, God saw a glimmer of hope in her heart. But as Charlie descended further into darkness, killing the drug kingpin and other criminals, God knew that he had to intervene. He appeared to Anya in a vision, his voice booming with authority. "My child, you have failed in your mission," he said, his eyes filled with disappointment. "Charlie has fallen too far into the darkness, and it is time for her to face the consequences of her actions." Anya fell to her knees, her heart breaking for the girl she had sworn to protect. "But Father, there must be a way to save her," she pleaded, her voice trembling with emotion. God shook his head, his expression stern. "It is up to Charlie now to find her way back to the light. I have given her the tools she needs, but the choice is hers alone." As Charlie walked away from the carnage, Anya appeared before her, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Why, Charlie?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Charlie looked at her, her eyes cold and unfeeling. "Because I can," she said simply, before turning and walking away, leaving Anya to wonder if God had truly abandoned them both. But God had not abandoned them. He had set Charlie on a path of redemption, a test to see if she could overcome the darkness that consumed her. And as Anya watched Charlie walk away, she knew that she had to have faith, that God's plan was greater than any of them could understand.